song. We've been doing for the whole month of June the Bible as the ultimate guidebook. And so during this month, we have learned that there are many wonderful, awe-inspiring treasures to be found in this sacred text when you're open to it. And I think also when we can reinterpret it so that we can incorporate it in our lives. Because as I'm reading it, it's like, what does this mean? You know, there's a lot of stuff in there that we really don't grasp because we don't understand it fully. So, just like the little boy who opened the Big Family Bible with fascination and looked at the pages as he turned them, suddenly something fell out. And he picked it up and looked at it closely. It was an old leaf from a tree. Years ago, it had been pressed between the pages. "Mama, look what I found," the boy called out. "What do you have there?" the mother asked. And the little boy said, "I think I found Adam's soup." So we too started out talking about the Bible, so we want to bring it up to a higher vibrational, though the Bible itself is a high vibrational book. So too, this month we have found treasures. We have found treasures. And today we're going to look at the final treasure in this series. And this treasure is found once again in the writings of David the shepherd in the Psalms. We've been going in and out of the Old and New Testament. And specifically chapter 91, verses 1 through 11, which is often called the prayer of protection. And this is how it reads in the Bible. "He who dwells in the protection of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver me from the snare of the fowler and the deadly pestilence. He will cover me with His feathers, and under His wings I shall find refuge. His truth shall be my shield and buckler. I shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flies by day, nor for the conspiracy that spreads in darkness, nor for the pestilence that wastes at noonday. Thousands shall fall at my side, and 10,000 at my right, but it shall not come near me. Only with my eyes shall I behold the rewards of the wicked. For thou, O Lord, art my trust. Thou hast established thy habitation in the highest. There shall be no evil befall me, neither shall any plague come near my dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over me in all my ways. I would say, this is in the Bible, wow, that conjures up quite a graphic image, or some graphic images, yeah? Some pretty unpleasant things, it sounds like. Snare of the fowler, which is a bird trap. Deadly pestilence. Terror by night. Arrow that flies by day. Conspiracy that spreads in darkness. Pestilence that wastes at noonday. Thousands falling at your side, 10,000 at your right. Wickedness, evil, plagues. All that good stuff. Sounds a lot like a Bruce Willis or an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. But I believe that these verses that include all this graphic description are simply there to make sure that we get the point. We get the point. And the point of this psalm is contained in these opening verses. He who dwells in the protection of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In Him will I trust. He will cover me with His feathers, and under His wings I shall find refuge. His truth shall be my shield and my buckler, which is armor. So the point of this psalm is to let us know that there is a protecting presence. As Carol read in her reading, there is a protecting presence that is always operating in our lives under any circumstances. No matter what stuff comes up, because stuff is always coming up, no matter what it looks like there is still this protecting presence. The psalm tells us that we are delivered. We are protected under the shadow of the Almighty. This psalm tells us that under all sorts of adverse circumstances, we shall find refuge under God's wings. And I want to illustrate both of these ideas, the idea of under the shadow of the Almighty and the idea of taking refuge under His wings, by two beautiful and I believe poignant stories. And each paints a vivid mental picture of what this might look like. So first, to illustrate the idea of abiding under the shadow of the Almighty, I have a story. Wishing to encourage her young son in his progress on the piano, a mother took her boy to a concert by this great pianist, let me try to say his name, Inyas Paderewski. So if you know him, I hope I said it right. So after they were seated, the mother recognized a friend down the aisle, so she got up from her seat and went over to greet her. And seizing this opportunity to explore, the little boy rose and eventually went through a door that said, "No admittance." So when the house lights were dimmed and the concert was about to begin, the mother took her seat again and noticed that her son was missing, but it was too late for her to do anything because the curtains were now opening, focused on this impressive Steinway in the center of the stage. And innocently picking out on these keys was a little boy playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, right? And at that moment, the great piano master made his entrance and quickly moved to the little boy and whispered in his ear, "Don't quit, keep playing." Then leaning over this little boy on the stage, the great pianist reached down with his left hand and began playing the bass part. And soon his right hand reached on the other side of the child and added a running obbligato. And together, the old master and the young novice transformed a frightening situation into a wonderfully creative experience, and the audience was mesmerized. It gives you, doesn't it give you that image of a protective presence? Yeah, shadow of the Almighty. The second is a beautiful and poignant story also, and I've repeated it a couple of years ago, I don't know how long ago, 3 years ago, at another talk, but it illustrates perfectly the idea that we take refuge under God's wings. So I'm going to repeat it. So after a forest fire in Yellowstone National Park, the forest rangers began their trek up the mountain to assess the inferno's damage. One ranger found a bird literally petrified in ash, perched on the ground at the base of the tree. Somewhat sickened by this eerie sight, he knocked the bird over with a stick. And when he moved it, 3 tiny chicks scurried from under their dead mother's wings. The loving mother, keenly aware of the impending disaster, had carried her offspring to the base of the tree and gathered them under her wings, instinctively knowing that the toxic smoke would rise. She could have flown to safety, but she would not abandon her babies. When the blaze had arrived and the heat scorched her small body, the mother had remained steadfast so that those babies could live. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will take refuge. It just brings that into such a beautiful perspective. And these are, I believe, beautiful illustrations of the ideas that we are discussing from this psalm. Let's get back down to earth right now, though. When we find ourselves in trouble, such as the little boy did on the stage, God isn't literally going to come down and put his arms around us and turn our discordant noise into beautiful music, nor when the heat is really on in our lives and we feel as if we're walking through fire. Anyone ever feel like that?
Oh, yeah.
God is not going to drop down and cover us with his wings. As much as we might wish that this was so, and we do. Dear God, please help me through this, right? So an important question for us to ask then is, how do we get under the shadow of the Almighty? And where are those gigantic wings to protect us? And you might have figured it out already. Because if you've been coming here for any length of time to this New Thought Religious Science Spiritual Center, then you know that those gigantic wings and under that shadow of the Almighty is not a place, but is a state of consciousness. A state of consciousness. A level of consciousness that is in each and every one of us. According to David in this 91st Psalm, this consciousness has the ability to attain that protection. So the secret, because it's already within us, that divine presence, that protective, loving energy is within us all the time. It's there. No matter what is taking place in our lives, that strong presence is always there to guide us, to pull us out of the darkness into its light.
Yes.
Because that light is always shining. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The secret to experiencing this protective presence, then, is the awareness within. How deep is your awareness within? Knowing that only wholeness exists. There is nothing absent in the state, the energy, the will, the mind, the love, whatever, of God. There's nothing absent. It is whole, complete, and perfect. That's what that means. That's wholeness. Nothing is absent. Wholeness itself. In verse 4, we are told, God's truth shall be my shield and buckler, which is armor. I had to look that up. And Holmes writes, a beautiful, loving Dr. Ernest Holmes writes, I'll tell you the pages, on 494 in the Science of Mind textbook, he writes this: the armor of God is faith in the good, and enduring and true. Against such there is no law. Nothing can stand. The armor of God suggests protection to those who believe in and trust the law of good. With this armor, knit together by the thread of unity running all through, he writes, strong with the strength of the Almighty, burnished with a clear vision and true estimates of life and reality, we are safe. We are safe. We abide under the shadow of everlasting truth. That's where we abide. We abide under the shadow of everlasting truth. So how do we feel protected when the media is escalating the violence reports every day? How do we feel secure and safe when our employment is terminated? Or when our loved one dies or leaves? or our friend is angry, or we are really ill. Well, again, we're talking about the level of consciousness. A level of consciousness in which we turn away from the human condition. We turn away from it and recognize the spiritual truth. It's what our practitioners do, and it's what our students are now doing in practitioner class. We just finished year 1, so that was a phenomenal, just a really great experience to be at that last class, because the level and the depth of consciousness was so apparent. It was beautiful to witness. So we profess as religious scientists, practitioners of truth, if you will, because if we're practicing the spirituality, we are practitioners of truth, that the truth that we teach is in that first core concept, and that is that God is all there is. This divine presence is all there is, everywhere present, in its fullness, despite any illusionary evidence to the contrast. No matter what we're going through, there is this power for good. And an interesting line appears at verse 8. Only with my eyes shall I behold the reward of the wicked. We can interpret this. I mean, a lot of us have been brought up maybe Christian-based, and this stuff really got in our face. But we're rearranging it. So what does that mean? What in the world does that truly mean? Only with your physical eyes can you see the adversity, strife, and discord. You can see it, it's there. Don't pretend it's not there, it is there. But of course, to refuse to see the manifestations of adversity would be dishonest with ourselves. But only with thine eye, single-mindedness, Emma Curtis Hopkins talks about, shall you see them with the inner eye, your inner awareness, can you then see the truth? While you're going through, you see all of this discord, this disharmony, this violence, this upset. But even as you're going through it, that inner eye knows the absolute truth. For thou, O Lord, art my trust. So we hold the high watch. So how do we feel protected and secure? A New Thought writer, this is a nice little writing, a New Thought writer answered that question when he wrote this. We recognize that hidden in the midst of discord and stress is an opportunity to practice spiritual principle, to keep our conscious thought stayed on the all-abiding power and love of the divine presence, and to witness spirit at work. We call forth an awareness of the underlying protection of wholeness discreetly woven into all creations, he writes. We affirm tranquility and serenity prevailing in and through all conditions. As we continually shift the focus of our attention away from the transitory world of effects and anchor our awareness in prayer. Prayer, consciously and directly, aligns us with this great power for good. That is our protection. Because in God, there's nothing to harm us. There's only this unconditional love. And so I found this recently, and it goes so nicely in this talk. When everything seems to go wrong, just P-U-S-H. Anyone that knows me knows I love accents. When the job gets you down, just P-U-S-H. When money is tight and it's time to pay those bills, P-U-S-H. And when you're afraid and you want to cry, P-U-S-H. P-U-S-H. Pray until something happens. Pray until something happens. So your P-U-S-H, you can remember that. And so in Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes turns the promise of the 91st Psalm, the promise of the protecting presence, into this beautiful affirmative prayer. And you might want to use this as a P-U-S-H in your life. It appears on page 257 in the Science of Mind textbook, and it goes like this. A great blessing of the Spirit pours through me now and protects me in all ways. My good is around and with me, so that I am secure and safe. The loving presence of Spirit is with me now and forever, so that I am divinely protected. I let go of all problems and know that Spirit is with me. The joy of universal love is within me, and I am richly blessed. Beautiful prayer. There's a lot of really beautiful prayers in that textbook. So at the beginning of the talk then, we painted a couple of pretty grim mental pictures, images, from the words of the 91st Psalm. And I thought we would end with one more mental image. But this one is going to be uplifting and light. We won't go into the darkness and all the other stuff. So this is a wonderful little poem which goes perfectly with Ernest Holmes' prayer. So I'm going to read it to you. I have in my hands 2 containers which God gave me to hold. He said, put all your sorrows in the black one, all your joys in the blue and gold. I heeded his words, and in them both my joys and my sorrows I did store. Though the blue one became heavier and heavier, each day the black one was as light as before. With curiosity, I opened the black box one day. I wanted to find out why. I saw in the bottom of the box a hole which my sorrows had fallen out by. I showed the hole to God and asked, where could my sorrows be? I asked God, why give me these? The blue and the black with the hole. God smiled a gentle smile and said, my child, you are with me. He said, the blue is for counting and increasing your blessings. The black is for letting go. Are we letting go? Are we holding on? Are we the walking wounded? Or do we, in spite of these wounds, which we will have, they feel like they're inflicted upon us, but that we are in the middle of, however they got there, are we counting our blessings? Are we moving to that place of being grateful for this day, this moment, the beauty, the sun, nature, whatever it is? Because that's what will multiply and get us through those transitory situations. God is good, God is awesome, and so it is.
And so it is.